Hey, welcome to a very special episode of the Hey Brother podcast. This is actually a bonus episode. In honor of the launch, we wanted to give one more extra episode out there. And this is actually an episode that came before all of them. Even though it's episode 5, this episode was the first episode, our pilot episode. Mitch and I sat down and I pitched him on this idea. And I was like really excited because I'm like, dude, I think we could really share something special that we received from the Lord. Like, how can we give our gifts that we've been given and share it with people. And we just love talking with each other. We're pretty close in age and share a lot of life together. And we're like, how can we bring this to people? How can we share this with people? Podcast. We'll do a podcast. And he's like, I want to do a pilot first. I don't know if I can podcast with you. I don't know what that's going to look like. Does it translate? Does conversation with us in real life translate to something that's still pretty much real life, but captured in an artificial way? Does it translate? And that's what this episode was a pilot. And it's different because it doesn't follow our typical format where I interview somebody and then me and Mitch break it down, give our thoughts, our first impressions, draw out some of like the teaching points in these interviews. Like these men we're interviewing, they're telling their stories, and by telling their stories, there's so much we can learn from their stories. And so me and Mitch really break open what they're talking about and how it impacted us as brothers. And so I didn't have an interview ready to go for us to pilot test the first episode. So we picked one from The Catholic Gentleman, a podcast from The Catholic Gentleman called The One Thing You Should Know About Fatherhood, or the best one thing that every father needs to know, or something to that effect. I'll throw a link in the description below. But we look at that, we listened to that, and then responded to that, and just saw how like working together on a podcast would go. And it's a good episode. It's a fun episode. It's enjoyable. It's definitely our first one, and you can see that. But we wanted to release it to you and get your thoughts. As always, with these first thoughts episodes and all the episodes, we want this to be a conversation, and we would love to hear your feedback, either through the comments or an email, and just start that dialogue. So here's the pilot episode, and we would love to hear from you guys. In today's world, Catholic men face countless challenges on the road to holiness. Addiction, anger, self-doubt, relationship struggles, and so much more. These battles can leave us stuck in mediocrity. But the truth is, we're made for more. The world needs good men. Welcome to the Hey Brother podcast, where we dive into these real struggles and share from our own experience as brothers and husbands and fathers. Together, we'll explore how to overcome life's challenges and become the men God created us to be. So grab a seat, brother, and remember, you're not alone.
I don't always agree in giving out free money, but if they're giving it to me...
Right. The whole student loan forgiveness thing?
Yeah, right. That was a terrible idea, but I will take full advantage of it.
Yeah, give me that money. Oh, man. Well, we want to dive into talking about the podcast and go from there. Yeah. Yeah, all right. Well, welcome to the Hey Brother podcast, where me and my brother Mitch sit down and share a conversation. It's something that we've been blessed with, to have this kind of brotherhood. We know that it's not out there in the world, but we want to invite guys into that, to the blessing that we receive from that. And today we're talking about a podcast that we both listened to. Mitch listened to it about a week ago. I listened to it last night on times 2.5 speed, and we both have takeaways from that. We'll put the link down in the show notes. It was The Catholic Gentleman, the one thing you should know about fatherhood, or the most important thing about fatherhood, something to that effect. Is there?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, but it's like you were upset a little bit because it was clickbait.
Yeah, that was my first takeaway. Is that I thought it was a little bit of a clickbaity title and kind of show at the beginning. Took them, like I said, like about 20 minutes to actually let you know what the one thing that you need to know about fatherhood is.
Well, tell us, what is that one thing before we
before we're guilty of the same thing.
It's understandable. Like that's like how the YouTube algorithm works, right? Like you
yeah.
like, thumbnail, title, clicks.
Right.
But
yeah, so that one thing is is that the essence of fatherhood comes from above, from God the Father.
okay.
And what that means is that like our earthly fatherhood isn't actually like, it's a pseudo fatherhood, I think is what they said in there.
Yeah.
So it's like all derivative based on the God the Father's love for us, and earthly fatherhood doesn't like live up to that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good point because it's like, well, it's actually something that took me by surprise. Like, well, I think Derek.
I didn't know any of their names.
Okay. Well, John's like the main lead guy on there, and then Sam's the therapist, and then I think it's Darren is the other guy. I think he was the one who was saying that, championing like this idea that our fatherhood is just a pseudo fatherhood or like a surrogate fatherhood of God the Father, and like as he even went as far as saying like the only fatherhood is like God the Father's fatherhood, which I thought was a bold statement.
Right, and then that's where I also thought it was a little clickbaity, because I think like it's like I thought like the essence of fatherhood, like they said that's the one thing, and I think that oversimplifies things. But there's definitely like it's the base, the foundation of it.
Right. Like always coming back to like our
Right.
fatherhood is directly tied into God the Father's fatherhood. And I don't think it's wrong to say that like it comes our father, like the only real fatherhood is that of God the Father, right? I think that's an accurate statement. I just was taken back by it. Like I was just like, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. And I think it fits into like the whole way they were talking about the podcast. They're like the lead in, it was like there's like it's like a no and depravity right now, that like there is a lack of fatherhood.
Yeah.
Like even secular society has picked up on that. And then and this is something I really liked about it, is like secular society, because they said it in the podcast, like the secular society is trying to fix it, but they're missing the mark. Like they're short. They're not actually getting there. And that's like when you point to it, it's like, yeah, what is fatherhood? What is it? And like when you have to actually ask that question, like it's where they were going. It's like,
right, because they're essentially, the secular world doesn't derive fatherhood other than, you know, the man that created you. Mm-hmm. And like that's like honestly kind of like my view, right? Like to a certain extent. Of before listening to that, because like it was a profound revelation that like no, our fatherhood is like modeled, like it's not in and of itself, and I think like the biggest takeaway that from that idea is that like how we are fathers to our children is like a direct correlation on how they view their relationship with God the Father.
right.
And that puts like a whole lot more weight to everything you do.
You feeling a little nervous after
Yeah.
hearing that? Yeah. No, I think that's fair. It's like I love that, because like Sam comes from like the psychological background. That's, you know, that's my world, is living in the Catholic psych world and mentoring folks, and he like was really clear about like the idea of modeling and like learning by example, right? There's a better word for that. I'm blanking on what the word is right now, but he did a good job of like showing like this is like we're literally like modeling the Father and how we parent our children, and for better or for worse. and I think it's really important though, because it's like how
for better or for worse. maybe worse more times than not.
Well, yeah, I mean that's a big target, right?
Yeah.
It's not like it's like if you meet somebody who's modeling the Father perfectly, let me know, like because that guy's probably Jesus.
Yeah. I also thought it was an interesting light to you know, like as like we're getting into our like our late 20s, that how much of my own failures I can see coming from like our dad. And
Sure.
I love you, Dad, but
Right.
but like it's just I don't know, especially me, like, 'cause I'm Dale too.
Yeah, right.
That it's beneficial though, because like I can see the things that we both are like come short at.
Yeah.
And it's nice having a person that's 30 some years older than I am, that I can kind of learn from those mistakes and build upon.
Yeah, because like that's a great point, because I think they were talking about it, and it was really focused on like us and parenting our kids. But when we think about it, like in our own, like where was our starting line is like a lot of times where I'll talk about with folks that I'm mentoring is like, where were you given what were you given? Like what kind of car were you given? Like to start the race? And like we both, I mean, I know a little bit. We could probably talk to our dad a little bit more, but like we both know like he wasn't given a great starting line, and like he set us up a lot better than what he was given, and that's something I'll be.
And man, he went through a lot more shit than when he was 29 than what we.
Right? Yeah. Like our sister like passing away, and having 4 kids under 27 or something like that. It was a lot. And so like we look at those starting lines though. It helps us understand like our viewpoint of God, right? Like every person's starting line of God starts with the Father, and then it's transitory. Like it's how we are setting our kids up,
right?
And so to be able to see like, oh yeah, this is the ways that I've been like where I've learned more in the school of love, like helps us be better dads. I do like the fact that they were pointing to it, like there's always room for improvement, right?
Yeah, right.
like
and they're a little more seasoned in fatherhood than what we were. What did we say earlier? That we have 12 years of experience in fatherhood,
right?
When you add all of our kids' ages together, so
yeah,
pretty new to this. But no, but they seemed like to come from a point that their kids were like a little bit older, and like my son just turned 3, so having him like teach God the Father love through him, it just doesn't always connect the same to a 3-year-old as it would maybe like a 6-year-old.
Yeah, like having those intentional conversations.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like, because it's like,
I feel like I would talk to him about God and the Father, and he's like, "Can I watch dinosaurs now?"
Right. I'm done with this. Yeah, absolutely. And like that's where they made a great point of like meeting your kids where they're at. Like it's something that you hear a lot when I was doing youth ministry and like evangelization circles. Like meet the folks where you're at. But it's like, as a father, like that kind of resonated with me. It's like we got to meet them where they're at, as even like age wise,
for sure. And then that was a big point that they talk about condescending to your children, but like not in like the condescending way,
right.
Like you got to meet them at their level. And honestly, that's something I found myself like thinking about when this last week after listening to that podcast, that I don't even remember what we were doing, but my son was like playing, and I'm like, I just need to match him. I think he was probably just playing with dinosaurs, and I'm like, I got to just play with these dinosaurs the way that he is, and join him in that, and it was just a beautiful way to view that fatherhood in that light, because it's like, like the some stuff happens in the moment you don't really think about it, but then when you reflect on it afterwards, I just was thinking about like how God the Father loves me that same way too,
right?
Like
he's coming down and playing dinosaurs with you,
right? Exactly. And I mean, like, not even that far off, because like there's like I have like hobbies and stuff that I really enjoy that that I've been thinking a lot about. I give a lot of time to it. A lot of brain power, maybe too much, but I'm like, well, you know what, God, like this is what I enjoy doing. Like I like playing this board game, and I like I like thinking about this board game. I like listening to videos and podcasts about it.
This board game being
Arkham Horror, the card game, of course.
Yeah, but he like meets us in
Yeah.
in those places, like he literally comes down to our level, and that's like they did a good job of like explaining condescending. I probably, if I was like setting up a podcast, I'd probably use a different word just because there's so much negative connotation.
Yeah, but
connotations.
I hear that, but I guess I appreciated it because they did spin it into a good light. Like by the end of the podcast, I heard the word condescending, and I wasn't thinking of it like
a bad way.
Yeah, in a bad way.
That's fair. Yeah, because like they unpacked it as like actually like lowering yourself to the level of the person you're walking with.
Yeah, that was weird.
All right. Our cameras just had a malfunction, but we're good now.
One thing you touched on earlier, and to derail it a little bit, is I wanted to like ask the question, like, what do you think are the measurements of fatherhood?
Measurements of fatherhood.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, like that's something that I had a boss at St. Peter when I was working there. I was youth minister. He was the business manager, so not a priest. Sometimes I had like 4 bosses at St. Peter, but the business manager would always
all at once, right?
Yeah, 4 bosses at one time, which isn't confusing at all.
What's a ship without 4 captains?
Yeah. Where would the Catholic Church be without the popes? The one thing that he was always trying to like get a grasp on is like what are our tangibles, and like no one like could point to that as like a church, which I think is a flaw in like our organizational leadership as a church. And like the same kind of mindset comes to me as like a father. Like, oh, I don't know, like what are like, because it feels so intangible. But if we don't actually like put some benchmarks to it, like I feel like we're preventing ourselves from growing in virtue and like our ability to be good fathers. And so that's a long what's the filibuster way of saying I don't know, like
I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to see fatherhood like maybe in the moment, but I think one of the greatest measurements of our fatherhood is our children. And that's the one thing that they said in the podcast was that
Sam.
Yeah, when because this is where like they had older kids than we, so I couldn't relate in some sense. But he said he would ask his kids, "What do I care about? Like, what's important to me?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, that would be a really interesting question. But the other side of that, though, is like I also think like at the later in life thing of you can look at the measurements of your fatherhood. It's not a real time measurement, but it's like how well off your kids are. And that's where I wanted to tie it back. Cause like I give our dad a ton of credit because I just see the positions that he put all of us, like all of our family in, and like in like every aspect, right? Like financial situations, opportunities, and like even our like not even, but most importantly, like our spiritual life, right?
Yeah.
Like that. Maybe like he was like the most nurturing in our early childhood, but he wasn't like taking away from it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to ask our sisters because like they're what 5-6 years older than us, and like Dad had a pretty big conversion moment like when we went out to Catholic family land. Like definitely changed his probably his own experience with fatherhood, and then by that like his experience or his ability to father, right?
Right.
And so like our experience, even like Amanda, like our youngest sister.
Yeah, there really is like 3 generations.
Yeah.
Like our sisters are definitely millennials, and Amanda is definitely Gen Z, and and then me and you are like more of a transitional, a zillennial, if you will.
A zillennial, yeah.
So like there was pretty like 3 different
phases of our parents' parenthood, right?
Yeah,
like
3 different ways that we grew up, really.
Yeah, different iterations, even like moving houses and stuff like that. Like it's wild
for sure.
Yeah, but I think like so like, our experience with, I think that was like the one thing that I appreciated that was modeled was like dad did grow like at some points.
Yeah.
Right. There's still room to grow, like for anyone. And like that was like, okay, like this is something that I can see and appreciate, like his own, even like just seeing it in pockets, right? Like that was like, okay, like I can grow as a man. Like there's definitely like ways that, if we look at the flip side, there's ways that he modeled the father that like I'm like, now I'm working through like my own like OCD perfectionistic parts and and that's different. Like it's subjectively different too, right? Like I'm different than you. We have different defense mechanisms.
Yeah.
You're more like dad. I was blessed with the indecisiveness of indecisiveness of both our parents. And so like and the same thing happens like when we look at our own fatherhood though too. Like our kids are pretty different like from one another. They're very similar, just like me and you are really similar, but like very different at the same time. And so it's like interesting, like when you think about the flip side and like how are we, so like we were set up well, but then there's also like ways that we're like trying to understand the father better, because of like the dad that we had. And then like the dad is like such a primary role in that.
Yeah.
And understanding the father.
Yeah, that's like another thing they got into is that it was St. Thomas Aquinas quote that they gave, and I just love that guy.
Aquinas, yeah.
Might be naming a child after part of that name, but
we'll see.
Maybe. But the quote was, "Authority reveals the man," right?
Yeah.
And
I was, when I listened to that, because I listened to it pretty quickly, I was just like, that sounds profound. I don't know if I really want to reflect on that.
Well, I thought it was like it's good because like one of the things, like who would follow someone that like determines his own authority, and like as like a child of a father that does that, what you're teaching them, and they said this in the podcast, is that authority comes from yourself. Right. And so, you know what, screw this guy. I'm not gonna follow my dad's authority, because if authority is in and of himself, then I can make authority in and of myself. And like that's crazy. So like you have to draw from the infinite authority. And I was thinking about that when I was driving over here today. It's just like that authority is so powerful, right? Like I'm going to listen to my dad because he's a father, and what is father? Like fatherhood comes from God itself.
Right.
And like that authority isn't just the authority that determines fatherhood, like God's father to humans and my dad's fatherhood to me. It's the authority that like could make mountains dance, right? Like it's way bigger than just fatherhood. It's the authority to do anything, right?
Mm-hmm. That's what our authority ties into, like the chain of, almost like a chain of command. Like,
yeah, right. And so like if as fathers, if we lead with the authority given to us, because we obey the authority that moves mountains,
right?
That authority that our children will view will like actually mean something. Yeah. You know,
because it doesn't have it in place in ourselves.
It's the only end is the
infinite.
Yeah, the infinite end. The end that is itself. Which that makes a lot of sense, and it points to a lot of errors like that you could see in fatherhood, right? Like, and just like the masculine genius in general. It points to a lot of errors in a lot of other parts too.
Well, because it's just like when I think we do that all the time, we take it on to ourselves, right? Like,
Right.
I got to solve this. Like, if I don't solve this, if I'm not self-reliant, then I'm not being man enough.
I feel like the word pride needs to be just said right here.
Right.
Pride, because like that's what pride is.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like, this idea, the spirit of self-reliance.
Yeah.
And guys tend to struggle with it more than the women, because women are more communal, right? Like, they inherently like look to others.
Yeah, right.
Where guys, and it's a beautiful thing, right? Like, because it demonstrates such a great need for solidarity. Solitude. Because it's good, right? Like, we should be alone by ourselves, because we're never actually alone by ourselves. We're alone with God.
Sure.
And like, that's a really important
whether you like it or not.
God is there with you. Yeah. But it's like, it points to a really necessary thing, but it gets twisted and contorted, like when like we don't take God into account, because then it becomes not alone with God, becomes alone in me trying to do it by myself.
Dude, I've been struggling with this lately, because having kids at pretty demanding ages right now, demanding of like just like your awake time,
right?
Something that like I've been falling into lately is that one of my favorite parts of the day is when they're in bed and then my wife goes to bed, and then I have, like between like 10 and 11 to myself, and then I've been going back into our office to play some NCAA football.
Nice.
But that I was just, that isolation, right? Like that alone time was like something that I had been wanting, but definitely it's misplaced, right? And I think that might be the difference between like alone time and like isolation, right? It's where how you perceive God, but in that time. But
and it's very much like in yourself, right? Like, because it's like God's always present, but it's like whether or not you're open to that switches from solitude or loneliness and isolation.
Yeah, and but like, man, it's so easy to just cut yourself off, because like I'm telling you, like I just sit in that office back there, and the door's not even closed, but it's on the other side of the house, and it feels like relaxing in a way that's not relaxing. Which
is like characteristic of society, right? Like,
yeah.
How did you relax last night? Oh, I watched 4 hours of Netflix. And how'd you feel afterwards? Kind of like shit. Like,
yeah, right.
It's like,
well, and that's the thing. I would play, like, I'm playing college football. I'm gonna play one game, and then I freaking lost last night. And, so I played a second game, and then I went to bed way too late, and then I would wake up on time.
Yeah,
and
then
it's
a chain of effect.
Yeah, now instead of being present to my kids, I'm annoyed with them and can't wait till they go back to sleep, and then I get my alone time, and I stay up too late again, and it really, like spirals.
Yeah. And I think, thank you for sharing that, because it's like, I resonated that with my experience as a dad and husband, and I think a lot of people do, right? Like, it's just like, it's so easy, because it's like, and you're right, like, we're misplacing a need. Like, the need is for alone time. Like, as guys, we need that, but it's like, it should be solitude and not just like being filled with other things. It's like, we recognize it, almost subconsciously recognize that need, and then we go to try to fill it with something that doesn't actually satisfy it, right?
Yeah.
And we
something easy.
Yeah, time and time again, right?
Yeah. It's so easy to just let your mind drift, and because like even like going back to like Arkham Horror, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I find it more, for me, like personally, it's better for me to like play that, because it's not easy, because I have to set it all up and like think about things actually, and like engage with it. It's a board game, so it's not engaging a screen. It's engaging reading and thinking, and the meaningless task of setting it up and putting it away. And that's a better leisure, to say the least, but it's still not like it's still easier than I keep joking about it, but it's still easier than engaging your interior life, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, that's like the thing. Like, why do we like neglect creating that time for silence? Is because it can be really hard, like, to face the interior world. But even like Arkham Horror is like, I love because they talked about this at the end, and I thought they could have highlighted this, and maybe this is what they did in their like Catholic Gentleman Plus. But like the idea of creativity, like how are we as fathers modeling creativity? And Arkham Horror does head and shoulders job better of that than playing NCAA Madden or Minecraft or like, you know, anything we consume on YouTube. Anytime we're choosing to consume and not like actively participate, like we're losing out on a chance to be creative. And so like Arkham Horror, like you're actually like creating story, right?
Yeah, that's what I love about the game.
Yeah,
it's the gameplay is the narrative, and like I know you said you don't care for like the theme too much, but like the theme is cheeks compared to like
the experience
of the game. Yeah. In my opinion, like it could be I don't know, like Dolphins or something. Yeah. I'd still play it.
Yeah, and that's what it like. I would say like with Minecraft, to go back to that, I meant more like watching it. But like actually playing it, like you could participate in creation more than you could other games,
right?
And that's like something I really enjoy doing. Like I'll sit down with my oldest son and like, all right, what do you want to do, right? Like let's build a garden, right? Like because that's what we got in our backyard. Let's put some trellises up, using trapdoors, right?
Yeah.
And like there's participation and creativity there, but even so, like. And I think that's what we fall into a lot of times is like it's easy to consume rather than actually participate in creation.
Yeah.
And even like what we're talking about, like Arkham Horror and Minecraft, and like they're good, but like there's higher forms of creativity that like we can enter into.
Yeah, they're good to an extent. Like Minecraft, Minecraft's a fantastic game for when you're online and you have like someone that you're playing with, and because you're free form to create what you think, like what you want to.
It's like the ultimate sandbox game.
Yeah, right. And then but like the whole time, in my opinion, like the best part is like you're just chatting with someone, and then creating too. Mm-hmm. But that's only good for the first 15, 30 minutes.
Sure.
It's when you get past that point that's when you can realize that you're kind of like isolating yourself instead. You're running from something instead of.
It goes from satisfying to like grasping almost.
Dude, when I found out that a day cycle in Minecraft was 5 minutes, I'm like, no, it's 1 minute. What are you talking about?
That video games, that's like a whole nother conversation. They're a time warp, right? Like they pull you in. But yeah, it's something that I'm gonna like kind of reflect on myself as like I try to get better at fatherhood. Is like how can I lean into the creative aspects of it? I think doing this podcast is like one way. Like I'm like, this is actually creative. I mean, even if no one listens to it, right? Like we produce something.
I'm listening to it right now. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but I think it's just like it's just a really cool thing about, and I notice I do it a lot. Like just switch to YouTube and just watch and consume rather than like actually go produce. And like even like it's like my son playing with Legos is more efficacious than me like watching YouTube, right? And it's like I can learn something here just by watching my kids play, and like actually entering into that with them is better. Yeah. So anyway, that's any more thoughts from the Catholic Gentleman podcast? And I feel like this is probably a good place to kind of wrap things up.
Yeah, no, that's all I got.
All right, so these are our thoughts on like how we thought about the Catholic Gentleman podcast. We invite you guys to chime in on the comment section below. We're gonna have this posted on YouTube and then a few other platforms. But you can also reach out to me. I'm running this powered by Craft It For More, the mentorship practice that I run. You can reach out to me personally And if it's podcast related, put that in the subject line, and I'll include Mitch in on the conversation. But if you go to nick@craftedformore.com, you can send me an email there. I'll throw that in the description where we have this posted. But we'd love to hear from you. We really want to invite guys into this conversation and give people that opportunity to have conversation with men, like real conversation that is vulnerable, that is leads somewhere that can help us grow as guys, because that's what we ultimately need is brothers in our lives, whether they're biological or actually spiritual brothers, to help push us. Iron sharpens iron, and help us become the men that we're called to be. That our wives, our families, our world, our communities need good men, and the only way to produce good men is by being in relationship with good men. So please send us comments in the comment section. Send us emails. We want to engage with you. We want this to be interactive. We want to help provide what good fellowship looks like with men, and to be able to engage with folks online to help give you a taste of that. And if you don't have it, let us be a part of that experience for you. Maybe it starts digital. Maybe it starts here online with us through this podcast, through YouTube video. But then it moves into real life. Once you see something, once you get a good idea of what it looks like, that can lead to real fruit and productivity in your life, real growth, and help you become the man that you're created to be. So just really encourage you guys, be interactive. We want to hear what you guys think, and just invite you into this as much as possible. And, subscribe. If you subscribe, you'll get notified next time we drop an episode, and we'd love to hear from you. So with that, I'll sign off. Any other last words from you, Mitch?
You forgot ring the bell.
Ring the bell. Ring it.
I don't know what that does, but they say that all the time.
Ding, 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 ding. Yeah. Ring it, please. In boxing, that means you hit somebody really hard. But all right. Well, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time.